Our body is talking, but not in words. Right now, beneath the surface of your skin, a silent symphony is unfolding, one that has been playing nonstop since before you were born. Trillions of cells are sending messages, receiving signals, making decisions, and adjusting to an ever-changing world. And yet, you don't hear a sound. It's a world without voices, without alphabets, and yet every message is precise. Every signal has meaning. Every cell knows exactly what to do, when to do it, and who to talk to. From the moment you woke up this morning, your cells have been communicating in a language more complex and elegant than any spoken tongue. This is the secret language of life. And in this quiet, slow-paced journey, we'll explore it together. How your cells think, talk, remember, and respond. You don't need a microscope for this trip, just your mind and a bit of curiosity. And if you find peace or fascination in this exploration, we invite you to gently support this calm corner of the internet. A like or a subscribe to the Sleepy Minds helps us keep creating slow, thoughtful videos like this one, where you can unwind, learn, and reconnect with the quiet wonder of your own body. Now, let's begin. Close your eyes for a moment. Picture the smallest unit of life, the humble cell. It is not just a blob, not just a dot under a microscope. It's a world of its own. Each one of your cells is like a self-sustaining city, complete with its own power plants, waste disposal systems, security guards, and communication networks. And there are trillions of them inside you, all cooperating, coordinating, and adjusting in real time. Imagine trying to get just 10 people to agree on something. Now imagine 37 trillion individual entities working in harmony. That's what your body does every moment of every day. But how? How do these tiny, invisible entities manage such perfect coordination? The answer is they talk. Not with voices, not with language as we know it, but with chemistry, signals, molecules, and electromagnetic pulses that pass information across the vast inner terrain of your body. This form of communication is ancient, older than speech, older than neurons, older than bones. It began in the simplest of life forms, billions of years ago. Single-celled organisms floating in primordial seas, learning how to sense light, heat, nutrients, danger. Those primitive whispers became the basis of everything. Even now, your cells still use these evolutionary tools, sending out chemical messengers to guide growth, trigger healing, or warn of invasion. Let's start with the basics. What is a cell? It's the smallest unit of life, a compartment sealed off by a membrane, containing all the instructions and machinery needed to live, grow, reproduce, and respond. You began as a single one of these, a fertilized egg. That single cell divided and divided again and again until you became the vast living constellation you are now. But not all cells are the same. Some carry oxygen, others transmit thoughts. Some build skin, while others fight infection or process food. And yet, no matter their role, all of them speak a common language, a language of molecules and motion. Let's take a simple example, the hormone insulin. After you eat, your blood sugar rises. Specialized cells in your pancreas detect this and release insulin, a hormone that travels through your bloodstream, telling other cells to absorb the excess sugar. It's a message, clear and direct. Take in more glucose. Store it. Balance is needed. If those cells don't listen, if they miss the message or cannot respond, the result is diabetes. In this way, disease is often just a breakdown in communication, a lost signal. a missed message, a misheard instruction. And health, in contrast, is the harmony of conversation, the ability of trillions of parts to stay in sync. Let's explore this further. Cells have ears, not in the traditional sense, of course, but on their surface, they're covered in protein receptors. These are the gatekeepers, shaped perfectly to fit certain signaling molecules, like locks waiting for the right keys. A single receptor might be tuned to adrenaline, another to serotonin, another to a specific immune trigger. When the right molecule comes along and binds to the right receptor, a chain reaction begins inside the cell, like a domino effect of chemical changes. This is called signal transduction. It's how cells not only hear a message, but act on it. Imagine, for a moment, a liver cell receiving a message to break down fat. The message arrives in the form of a hormone. It docks with the receptor. That receptor changes shape, triggering enzymes inside the cell. The enzymes set off further reactions until, within moments, the entire cell changes its behavior, all from a single molecule landing in the right place. This process is so fast, so precise, and so constant that it's easy to forget it's even happening. But inside your body, it never stops. Nowhere is this more evident than in your nervous system. Neurons communicate through a blend of electrical and chemical signals. An impulse races down a neuron, like lightning down a wire, until it reaches the end, where it releases neurotransmitters into the tiny gap between cells. This gap, called a synapse, is where magic happens. The neurotransmitters float across, bind to the next cell, and the message continues. It's as if the cells are tapping each other on the shoulder, passing along a message in molecular Morse code. Each time you think, feel, remember, or move, this cellular language is hard at work. The speed? Astounding. Some signals move at over 200 miles per hour. But speed isn't everything. Precision matters even more. Take serotonin, for example, a neurotransmitter often associated with mood. Too little, and you may feel anxious or depressed. Too much, and things can become chaotic. Your brain depends on just the right amount, at just the right time, delivered to just the right place.
This is the artistry of the cellular language, not just that it exists, but that it's tuned so precisely, that it balances chaos and order, silence and signal, rest and reaction. Let's zoom back out. When we say the body is intelligent, we don't always mean conscious intelligence. Often, we're referring to cellular intelligence, the ability of your cells to sense, decide, and act based on the environment. This intelligence is not housed in a brain or a central authority. It's distributed, decentralized, collaborative. A skin cell doesn't need permission to respond to a cut. A white blood cell doesn't wait for instructions to chase a virus. These cells know because they've been trained, shaped, and wired through millions of years of evolution to recognize certain patterns. And their language, their signals, reflect that training. Even in a single drop of your blood, thousands of different messages are being sent every second. Messages to grow, to slow down, to protect, to remember, to live. Let's look deeper at a fascinating concept: signal cascades. Imagine a single hormone molecule, just one, landing on a cell's surface. That one interaction sets off a chain reaction inside the cell, triggering dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of chemical changes. This is known as amplification. One tiny voice causes an entire crowd to react. Take epinephrine, for instance, the chemical behind the fight or flight response. When it binds to a receptor on a liver cell, The result is rapid mobilization of glucose into the bloodstream. This happens because a cascade of internal messengers is unleashed, activating enzymes that break down stored glycogen into usable energy, all from a single binding event on the outside of a cell. That's the power of biochemical communication. It's not just about contact. It's about meaning. Every signal has intent. Every molecule carries instructions. And every receptor is waiting for the right message at the right time. And yet, not all messages are meant to be heard by every cell. This is where specificity enters the story. Your bloodstream is like a river of floating messengers, hormones, nutrients, immune cells, waste. But not every cell reacts to every molecule. Only cells with the right receptors can understand a message. This is how your body stays organized. It's like mailing a letter. Only the recipient with a matching address can open it. Let's take an example you know well. Insulin. Produced by the pancreas. Insulin travels through your blood, but only certain cells, like those in your liver, muscles, and fat tissue, have the receptors to hear its message. Those receptors recognize insulin, bind to it, and initiate internal changes to store or use glucose. Other cells, without those receptors, ignore the insulin completely, as if it were invisible. This allows for incredible control and specialization. Imagine if every cell in your body responded to every signal. Chaos would erupt. Muscles would twitch unnecessarily. Bones might try to grow in places they shouldn't. Immune cells could attack harmless tissues. Instead, your body is built on selective listening. Each cell knows when to pay attention and when to stay silent. This is also how cancer begins, when a cell stops listening to stop signals. In a healthy body, cells know when to divide and when to rest. But a cancerous cell ignores the rules, bypassing checkpoints, muting suppressor genes, and essentially shouting over the quiet harmony of the body's internal messaging. In that sense, cancer isn't just uncontrolled growth, it's a communication breakdown. Now let's shift gears and talk about touch. Yes, even cells can feel. Cells communicate not just chemically or electrically, but mechanically. This is known as mechanotransduction, the ability of cells to sense and respond to physical forces like pressure, tension, and stretch. For example, the cells in your skin and muscles are constantly responding to movement. When you stretch a muscle, certain ion channels open in the surrounding cells, allowing calcium to enter. This, in turn, triggers the cell to release growth factors or reinforce its structure. The same principle applies to your bones. When they're stressed, from walking, lifting, or even standing, the cells inside the bone, called osteocytes, sense the pressure and signal for reinforcement. This is how bones grow stronger over time, through mechanical signaling. In other words, your body doesn't just respond to what it hears or tastes internally. It also responds to what it feels. The deeper we go, the more incredible it becomes. Even the timing of signals is a form of language. Some signals are fast and urgent, like neurotransmitters that fire within milliseconds. Others are slow and sustained, like hormones that regulate metabolism or growth over hours or days. There are signals that work locally, only affecting neighboring cells, and others that broadcast body-wide. This gives your body layers of conversation, like whispers between neighbors, urgent alerts over intercoms, or slow memos passed through the bloodstream. All of it happens quietly, invisibly, and continuously, even while you sleep. In fact, while you're asleep, a remarkable array of signaling processes continue in the background. Melatonin is released. Growth hormone spikes. Your immune system reorganizes. Memory circuits in your brain rewire. Cells communicate in ways we are only beginning to understand. And all of this without you ever being aware. That's the astonishing beauty of this hidden language. Now, let's explore a different kind of cellular conversation, one that's emotional. Yes, emotional. While cells don't feel emotions the way we do, the chemistry of emotion is written in cellular language. When you're afraid, your hypothalamus sends signals to your adrenal glands. They release adrenaline. That adrenaline affects your heart cells, your lung cells, your liver, your pupils, all preparing you for fight or flight.
The emotion you feel, the racing heart, the dry mouth, the sharp breath, is the result of thousands of cells receiving chemical messages and responding accordingly. When you're in love, oxytocin flows. When you're sad, serotonin might dip. When you're content, endorphins are released. And at the cellular level, every one of these feelings is a vast concert of biochemical whispers. The body doesn't separate emotion from biology. It's all language, all signal, all response. So perhaps it's not wrong to say that your cells do feel in their own way. They sense, they adjust, they remember, they react, they speak. This brings us to one of the most beautiful aspects of cellular communication: feedback. Feedback loops are how the body stays balanced. When something increases too much, a signal is sent to reduce it. When something is lacking, a signal tells the body to produce more. This constant back and forth is how homeostasis is maintained, a dynamic, flowing equilibrium. For example, if your blood sugar rises too high, insulin is released to bring it down. If it drops too low, another hormone, glucagon, tells your liver to release stored sugar. It's a conversation, a negotiation, a careful give and take. This is the language of life. It's not chaotic. It's not random. It's intelligent, adaptive, and elegant. And every moment of your existence depends on it. There's one more piece of this intricate system that deserves attention: context. Cellular signals are not received in isolation. Just like words in a conversation mean different things depending on tone, timing, and situation, a signal in the body can trigger very different responses based on context. Let's imagine a simple molecule, calcium. To a heart cell, calcium triggers contraction. It literally makes the heart beat. To a neuron, calcium helps release neurotransmitters. To an egg cell, calcium triggers the start of development after fertilization. And in certain cells, excess calcium is a warning sign, triggering a process of self-destruction known as apoptosis. One signal, many meanings, all depending on who's listening and when. This is part of the remarkable fluidity of the body's internal language. Messages are rarely absolute. They're dynamic, modulated, and constantly influenced by what else is going on. A cell doesn't just receive a message and act. It evaluates it. What other signals am I receiving? How strong is this signal? Have I seen this before? Is this signal normal, or is something wrong? This ability to integrate information is what gives cells their apparent intelligence. They don't react blindly. They weigh, measure, compare, and only then do they decide. In a way, each cell has a kind of internal logic, a silent system for interpreting the world. And sometimes, this logic leads to truly surprising outcomes. For example, certain immune cells can literally change personality depending on the chemical environment they're in. They might behave aggressively in one setting, but become gentle and nurturing in another. This plasticity is essential for healing, for growth, and for adaptation. The same is true during development. In the early stages of your life, when you were just a clump of dividing cells, every cell was identical. But over time, signals began to shape identity, telling some cells to become skin, others to become bone, still others to become eyes, lungs, or neurons. How do these signals know what to say? And how do cells know how to respond? The answer lies in morphogen gradients, chemicals that spread through developing tissues, creating concentration patterns. Depending on where a cell is in the gradient, near the source or farther away, it interprets the message differently. It's like music. The same note can sound soft or loud, sharp or smooth, depending on its place in the melody. Cells read these gradients and make life-shaping decisions. Who they are, where they belong, what they must become. No brain is guiding this. No one is orchestrating the plan. And yet, it unfolds perfectly. This is the awe-inspiring part of biology. How order emerges from seeming chaos. How intelligence arises from the collective action of unintelligent parts. In every cell-to-cell message, in every whisper of a molecule, a larger pattern is born. This is especially true in the brain. Neurons don't just send messages. They build networks. These networks reinforce themselves based on usage, a concept known as neuroplasticity. The more two neurons talk to each other, the stronger their connection becomes. This is the biological basis of learning. Cells that fire together, wire together. It means your thoughts, memories, habits, even personality, all arise from countless microscopic messages passed between cells over and over again until the message becomes part of you. The secret language of cells becomes the story of your life. Let's take a moment now and consider something subtle yet profound. Even when you feel still, your cells are never silent. They're always communicating, always adjusting, always responding. Right now, as you listen to these words, your ears are converting sound waves into electrical signals. Those signals travel to your brain, where networks of neurons interpret them as meaning. At the same time, your skin is sensing temperature. Your lungs are exchanging oxygen. Your immune cells are patrolling. And through it all, your cells are in constant contact. It's like standing in a room full of quiet murmurs, not chaotic, not loud, but purposeful, humming with life. And yet, you hear none of it. That's part of the beauty. Before we end this part of the journey, let's revisit a simple truth. Cells are not just tiny machines. They are living listeners. They take in information, process it, and respond in real time. They remember. They adapt. They cooperate. And above all, they speak. The language is not made of words, but of molecules, energy, pressure, timing. And through this language, your body lives. From birth to breath to memory to healing, every moment depends on this hidden conversation. A quiet dialogue, always unfolding. A secret language, written in every heartbeat. And the more we learn to understand it, the more we realize how little we truly know. But that's what makes it beautiful. Let's take a short journey, deep inside a single cell. Imagine now, not just observing the cell from the outside, but stepping inside it. You're now smaller than a virus, gliding through a vast and complex world of motion, light, and invisible purpose. Around you, the cytoplasm is thick like jelly, a crowded soup of proteins, nutrients, organelles, and pathways. Microtubules stretch like scaffolding across this space, guiding tiny transport proteins that walk along them, carrying vesicles like delivery trucks on highways. These vesicles carry messages, enzymes, waste, always moving toward their destinations. It's a city without traffic lights, yet no one crashes. Every destination is known. Every delivery is timed. In the corner, you see the nucleus, the command center. It's surrounded by a double membrane with portals guarded by molecular gates. Inside, DNA is coiled and packed, yet accessible. And from it, blueprints are constantly being copied. RNA strands that will be sent out into the cell to guide the creation of new proteins. Each protein made here is part of a sentence, a paragraph, a story being told in real time. The story of that cell's purpose, whether it's building a skin layer, secreting insulin, or helping to move your muscle. Further along, you pass by mitochondria, power plants, yes, but also crucial players in messaging. Mitochondria don't just make energy. They respond to stress, release signals to trigger cell death when needed, and even shape aging. Even the shape of the cell changes its language. Flattened cells send different signals than round ones. Stretched cells behave differently than compressed ones. Form is not separate from function. It is function, and communication adapts accordingly. Now let's talk about a special class of messengers, cytokines. These are small proteins secreted by immune cells, and they carry powerful instructions. Some call for reinforcements. Others suppress inflammation. Some make blood vessels more permeable. Others activate specific lines of defense. When you get a cut or catch a virus, your immune cells don't just respond randomly. They send out waves of cytokines, recruiting allies, modulating the response, coordinating healing. This is called a cytokine network, a vast, interconnected language that allows the immune system to think collectively. In fact, a cytokine storm, when too many of these messages are sent without balance, can be fatal. It's not the infection that kills. It's the body's own overreaction to the message. This again reminds us, even in biology, miscommunication can be dangerous. Another class of messengers, growth factors. These are proteins that tell cells to divide, to specialize, to repair. During wound healing, platelets release platelet-derived growth factor, PDGF, calling skin cells to divide and regrow, while telling blood vessels to form anew. Nerve growth factor, NGF, helps injured neurons regenerate. It's not magic. It's messaging. A wordless, chemical sentence that says, it's time to rebuild. Now let's go even more subtle, to pheromones. In animals, and to some extent humans, these airborne molecules are messages between bodies. Ants use them to guide trails. Mice use them to signal reproductive readiness. Some scientists even believe humans subconsciously respond to pheromones, though the science is still debated. Still, the fact remains, cells are capable of long-range messaging, chemical words that float from one organism to another. And we haven't even mentioned exosomes, tiny packets of material released by cells and taken up by others. These aren't just waste. They're micromessages containing proteins, RNAs, and even fragments of DNA. Think of exosomes as encrypted emails sent between cells. In cancer, Exosomes can promote growth. In healing, they can encourage regeneration. In the brain, neurons use them to fine-tune connectivity. They're tiny, but powerful. And finally, let's pause at one more frontier of cell signaling: electromagnetic fields. Some studies have shown that cells respond to electrical gradients across their membranes. These gradients are crucial in nerve signaling, muscle contraction, and even in early development. Heart cells, for example, rely on tightly coordinated electrical signals to beat in sync. When those signals go awry, arrhythmias occur. The heart doesn't beat from muscle alone. It beats because of electrical language. It listens to rhythm. So whether through molecules, touch, pressure, or electricity, your cells are immersed in a universe of conversation. You are not a silent organism. You are a constantly speaking one. Even now, as you sit still, millions of messages are being sent, interpreted, acted upon. Messages like, send nutrients here, divide now, hold off, not yet, repair that break, protect against invasion. Remember this pathogen. Pass this signal along. Stop. That's enough. Begin again. And all of this happens silently, unseen, unheard.
but never meaningless. Your body is not just a machine, it is a society. Each cell a citizen. Each message a whisper in a beautiful, ancient code. A code older than words, older than writing, as old as life itself. Every living thing, from a tiny fern leaf to the blinking eye of a human, is the result of collaboration. Not just between organs or tissues, but between individual cells, constantly speaking, aligning, and responding as one. Imagine, for a moment, a giant orchestra, dozens of instruments, hundreds of players. Yet somehow, they all stay in sync, responding to the conductor, to each other, to the music itself. If just one instrument falls out of rhythm, the harmony shatters. Now picture your body. 37 trillion players. No single conductor. And yet, the harmony is never lost. That's because your cells are always communicating, and not just with signals that tell them what to do, but with feedback, corrections, and constant adjustments. This is not just coordination, it is conversation in motion. Let's start with something you've experienced hundreds of times: a cut on your skin. You feel a sting. A bead of blood forms. And then, the healing begins. But behind the scenes, it's not your skin alone that heals. It's your cells, coordinating across multiple systems: immune, vascular, muscular, epithelial. All of them communicating in real time. The very first to respond are platelets, small cell fragments in your blood. They arrive at the site, detect damage, and immediately begin to plug the wound. But while doing so, they also release chemical signals, known as clotting factors, that call for reinforcements. Soon, neutrophils, a type of immune cell, swarm in. Their job is not just to kill potential invaders, but to clean up cellular debris. And as they do, they also broadcast messages using cytokines. We've got damage here. Bring backup. We need healing. Those cytokines are picked up by nearby blood vessels. In response, the vessels become more permeable, allowing more immune cells and proteins to exit the bloodstream and enter the damaged tissue. Next come the macrophages, the big eaters, who engulf dead cells, clear the field, and release growth factors that signal for rebuilding. Then, fibroblasts arrive. These are the architects of healing. They lay down new scaffolding, forming collagen to repair the wound. Meanwhile, keratinocytes, the cells that make up your skin, begin to divide and migrate across the surface, sealing the wound closed. All of this, millions of cells, dozens of types, hours of coordinated effort without a single conscious command, because every cell received the right message and knew how to respond. This is the miracle of cellular coordination. Let's now go deeper to something less visible: inflammation. We often hear that word in negative contexts: chronic inflammation, inflammatory diseases. But in truth, inflammation is one of the body's most important cellular strategies. It's the red alert system, the emergency broadcast network. When a tissue is damaged or infected, it doesn't just sit idle. The cells there release signaling molecules like histamines and prostaglandins, announcing danger. These chemicals dilate nearby blood vessels, increase permeability, and summon immune cells from afar. And again, the process is precise. Not every part of the body reacts. Only the area in distress. Only the cells that receive the signal. The key to this precision is receptor specificity. Each cell type expresses a unique combination of receptors, like unique locks on its surface, and only certain chemical keys fit them. This allows the body to deliver highly targeted messages. Imagine you're sending a letter marked for macrophages only. Only cells with macrophage-specific receptors will open the message. This is how, even in the chaos of inflammation, order is maintained. But what happens when communication fails? Sometimes, cells don't hear the message because their receptors are faulty or missing. Other times, the wrong signal is sent, as in autoimmune diseases, where the body attacks its own cells due to a mistaken identity. In multiple sclerosis, for instance, immune cells misidentify the insulating sheath around neurons, called myelin, as a threat. They attack it, disrupting communication between neurons and causing neurological symptoms. And again, it all starts with a misunderstood message. This is why the language of cells must be flawless, or at least constantly corrected. One of the most sophisticated ways cells keep communication reliable is through cell adhesion molecules, or CAMs. These are proteins on the surface of cells that help them stick to each other, not just physically, but informationally. When cells are bound together, they're in constant contact, sharing tiny messages that maintain tissue structure, regulate division, and determine movement. In embryos, CAMs are responsible for guiding migrating cells to their proper destinations. In adults, they help immune cells find the exact spot of infection. In the brain, they help neurons grow the right connections, shaping thoughts, memory, and personality. But CAMs also serve another purpose: telling a cell when it doesn't belong. When a cell detaches from its neighbors without good reason, as cancer cells often do, the body takes notice. Normally, such a cell is flagged for destruction. But if the messages that signal you don't belong are ignored or suppressed, cancer can grow unchecked. So again, we return to the principle: communication equals control. Miscommunication equals disease. Let's shift now from healing and immunity to something more subtle: development. Before you were born, your body had to be built from a single cell. That meant not just growing, but organizing, assigning roles, telling cells where to go, what to become, when to stop. How is this possible? The answer lies in morphogen gradients and positional signaling. As we briefly explored in Part 1, morphogens are chemicals released by specific cells that diffuse through the surrounding tissue, creating gradients, areas of high and low concentration. Cells interpret these gradients to determine their fate. For example, a high concentration might mean become a spinal cord, while a medium level might say become muscle, and a low level might signal form skin. This responsiveness is what gives stem cells such promise in regenerative medicine. If we can understand the right signals, we might be able to guide stem cells to repair damaged organs, restore lost tissue, or even treat degenerative diseases. But the challenge isn't just the cells. It's the language. We need to learn to speak it fluently, to mimic it, to respect its complexity. Because even the smallest message, if misread, can lead to chaos. Let's now explore the gut, often called the body's second brain. Here, over 100 million neurons, more than in the spinal cord, control digestion, monitor nutrients, and even communicate with the brain. And they're not alone. Trillions of bacteria, your microbiome, live in your gut, forming one of the most active centers of interspecies communication in the human body. Yes, interspecies. These microbes aren't silent passengers. They produce chemicals, neurotransmitters, vitamins, all of which can influence your cells. Some gut bacteria produce short-chain fatty acids, which signal to your immune system. Others synthesize serotonin, affecting your mood. Still others train your immune cells to distinguish friend from foe. In return, your gut cells feed them, regulate their populations, and monitor for threats. This cross-kingdom communication between your human cells and microbial guests is ancient and vital. Disrupt it, and the consequences ripple outward. Inflammation, autoimmunity, even changes in behavior. It's no wonder scientists now speak of the gut-brain axis, a direct communication line between your intestines and your central nervous system. Feeling anxious? It might begin in your gut. Feeling tired after a heavy meal? That's not just digestion, it's signaling. Your gut is alive with conversation, and your body is always listening. Let's take a quiet breath here and zoom out. If you could listen to your entire body, not just hear your heart or lungs, but actually hear the conversation of your cells, what would it sound like? It wouldn't be chaotic. It wouldn't be loud. It would be like a symphony warming up. Whispers layered on whispers, notes rising and falling. A biological orchestra with no conductor, and yet every player in perfect timing. In this quiet world of cellular dialogue, even mechanical forces can become messages. Yes, touch, pressure, stretch. These are not just physical sensations, they're informational events. In your blood vessels, endothelial cells respond to the flow of blood. When flow increases, they release nitric oxide, causing the vessels to dilate. When flow decreases, they release different signals, all to keep pressure balanced. In your bones, osteocytes, a kind of bone cell, detect stress and strain. If a bone is underused, the cells signal for it to weaken. If a bone is heavily used, they signal to reinforce it. This is why astronauts lose bone density in zero gravity. Their bones stop receiving the message of pressure. Even stem cells can respond to mechanical signals. If placed on a soft surface, they might become brain cells. On a stiff surface, bone cells. The physical environment becomes part of the conversation. Touch becomes talk. Let's now look at how viruses and pathogens try to hijack this system. Many viruses, like HIV, influenza, and even the common cold, succeed not just because they invade cells, but because they manipulate communication. They mimic messenger molecules. They interfere with cytokines. They disguise themselves to appear harmless. Some even produce decoy receptors, soaking up immune signals before they can reach their true targets. It's biological espionage, a war of whispers, deception, and disguise. And your cells fight back in kind. In response to infection, cells increase antigen presentation, holding pieces of invaders on their surface to alert immune cells. They upregulate defense genes. They call for help through messenger RNA and cytokines. They sacrifice themselves if needed to prevent the spread. This microscopic battle isn't random. It's scripted in language, shaped by evolution, refined by survival. Even cancer learns the language of deception. Tumors often send out anti-inflammatory signals to calm nearby immune cells. They create microenvironments that suppress detection. Some even co-opt normal growth signals to keep dividing without limits. Yet your immune system, especially T cells and natural killer cells, is always watching, listening, waiting for the wrong message to appear. Sometimes, the language of sickness is just as intricate as the language of health. Let's finish this chapter with something deeply beautiful: cellular memory. Every immune cell that survives an infection retains part of the message, a chemical memory, a map of the invader's signature. So the next time the same threat appears, the response is faster, stronger, smarter. Your body doesn't just heal, it learns. And this learning isn't stored in a brain, it's stored in proteins, receptors, RNA, cellular behavior. It's a memory without words. A language written not in ink, but in life itself. Even in the womb, your mother's immune system sends signals to your developing cells, helping shape your future health. In early life, the microbiome helps educate your gut. During adolescence, hormonal shifts transform the messages received and sent by nearly every cell in your body. And throughout your lifetime, these messages continue, adapting, shifting, growing. Every scar on your body is a memory of cellular conversation. Every reflex, every sensation, every heartbeat, a message sent and received. Every moment you live is a quiet chorus of unseen whispers. What makes this language so powerful is not just its precision, but its grace. Cells don't shout. They don't panic. They listen first, then speak. They speak only when needed. And when they do, it's with clarity, with balance, with purpose. From the regeneration of skin to the firing of neurons. From the building of a fetus to the defense against a virus. From the whisper of pressure to the explosion of thought. Every act of life is carried forward not by commands, but by communication. And the more we study it, the more we begin to understand. The secret of life is not just in DNA or structure, but in connection. And in this language, this silent, invisible, beautiful language, you are made. If intelligence requires a brain, then what do we make of a cell?
It has no cortex, no neurons, no thoughts in any human sense. And yet, it makes decisions. It adapts to new environments. It learns from experience. It collaborates with others. It even anticipates threats and changes course when needed. Could we call this thinking? In the quiet universe beneath your skin, there exists a kind of wisdom, a cellular intelligence, honed by billions of years of evolution. And though it does not resemble what we call thought, it functions with striking logic, strategy, and grace. To begin, let's revisit the idea of cellular decision-making. Every moment, your cells are bombarded by signals. Some encourage growth. Others demand rest. Some warn of danger. Others invite transformation. And each cell, without any central consciousness, must sort through this information and make a choice. To divide or not. To migrate or stay. To activate or remain dormant. To repair or self-destruct. This is not random. It is calculated, based on internal conditions, external messages, historical memory, and molecular logic circuits built into the cell's design. Let's explore an example: the cell cycle. The cell cycle is the process by which a cell prepares to divide. But before that division occurs, the cell must pass through several checkpoints. At each stage, G1, S, G2, and M, molecular signals assess the situation. Is there DNA damage? Are enough nutrients available? Has the previous step been completed correctly? If the answer is yes, the cycle proceeds. If not, the cell halts and either attempts to fix the issue or triggers apoptosis. This is not mere reaction, it's active evaluation. Proteins like p53, sometimes called the guardian of the genome, act like molecular supervisors, scanning for errors. If damage is detected, p53 can pause the cycle or even push the cell into suicide mode to prevent potential cancer. This one protein, just a collection of atoms and bonds, makes decisions that affect the fate of an entire organism. And it does it without a brain. Let's look at another stunning example: bacterial chemotaxis. Chemotaxis is how bacteria navigate their environment. They swim toward nutrients and away from toxins, using rotating flagella like microscopic propellers. But what's extraordinary is how they determine direction. Bacteria don't see in any conventional sense. Instead, they sample their environment over time. If the concentration of a nutrient increases, they swim straight. If it decreases, they tumble and reorient. It's a strategy that mirrors trial and error learning, using feedback to adjust behavior. This is a kind of cellular memory, short-term and localized, but effective. The bacterium remembers what it sensed just moments ago and compares it to now. It decides, based on past experience, how to move forward. What's even more fascinating is that some immune cells, like neutrophils, use similar logic. When chasing a pathogen through tissue, they don't follow it blindly. They detect chemical trails left behind and adapt their path accordingly, adjusting direction, speed, and behavior. In a sense, they are hunting, with memory, flexibility, and purpose. Let's now consider adaptation. When cells are exposed to stress, heat, toxins, lack of oxygen, they mount a coordinated response. Genes are activated that produce protective proteins, pump out harmful substances, or slow metabolism. If the stress is prolonged, the cell may undergo more permanent changes, altering which genes are expressed, reshaping its internal architecture, or even changing identity. This is seen in the liver, where exposure to toxins can lead to increased expression of detoxifying enzymes, or in muscle cells, where repeated exercise causes them to build more mitochondria, increasing endurance. This isn't passive tolerance. It's adaptive learning. Cells don't just endure change, they prepare for it. Now let's turn to the phenomenon of cellular differentiation. During development, stem cells become specialized, turning into muscle, skin, bone, or nerve. But how do they decide? The answer lies not in random fate, but in a dynamic conversation with their surroundings. Signals from neighboring cells, mechanical stress, and chemical gradients inform the stem cell's identity. This process is called epigenetic regulation, the tuning of gene expression based on environmental input. What's fascinating is that these choices can be stable, lasting a lifetime, yet flexible enough to reverse in rare cases. Some cells can even be reprogrammed, reverting to a more primitive state when needed. This is not rigidity. This is contextual intelligence. The cell does not ask, "What am I?" It asks, "What is needed of me here and now?" And it answers, without language, without consciousness, but with absolute clarity. Let's now explore an aspect of cellular behavior that mirrors strategy: immune surveillance. Your immune cells, particularly T cells, patrol your body constantly, like microscopic detectives. But they don't simply attack anything unfamiliar. They evaluate. They compare. They wait for confirmation. When a T cell encounters another cell, it scans a molecule on its surface called the Major Histocompatibility Complex, or MHC. This structure displays fragments of proteins, samples from within the cell. If those fragments look normal, the T cell moves on. But if the peptides appear foreign, from a virus, for instance, the T cell responds. This isn't impulsive. It's deliberate. Some T cells even require co-stimulatory signals, a second confirmation before they launch an attack.
This is not just immune defense. It is discerning judgment, an awareness of context, risk, and consequence. In fact, your immune system is trained for this. During development in the thymus, immature T cells undergo education. They are exposed to normal proteins and tested for their reactions. If they react too strongly, a sign they might cause autoimmune disease, they are eliminated. This is called negative selection. It ensures that only T cells with the right temperament survive. Think about that. Your cells go through a kind of moral testing before being allowed into circulation. Not because they think, but because their function demands restraint and wisdom. Let's explore another kind of cellular foresight, anticipation of scarcity. In times of nutrient limitation, such as during fasting, cells do not simply shut down. Instead, they switch strategies. They activate genes that promote autophagy, literally self-eating, a process in which the cell digests its own damaged parts to recycle nutrients and maintain function. Autophagy is a brilliant adaptation. It conserves energy, clears waste, and increases resilience. What's more, studies show that moderate stress, like caloric restriction or intermittent fasting, can enhance autophagic activity and increase lifespan in various organisms. This suggests that cells don't just react to deprivation. They prepare for it, learn from it, and emerge stronger. Let's now move to something a bit more poetic, cell migration. Cells move with purpose. Whether during development, healing, or immune response, cells don't just drift. They follow gradients, respond to signals, and navigate complex terrain. During embryogenesis, for instance, neural crest cells travel across the embryo, using chemical cues to find their precise destinations, forming parts of the face, heart, and nervous system. Along the way, they pause, communicate, and course-correct. And in the adult body, fibroblasts migrate to wounds, endothelial cells move to form new blood vessels, and immune cells swarm toward infection. This cellular choreography is not mindless. It is informed movement, guided by signals, shaped by interaction, and adjusted in real time. Even cancer cells exhibit this, in darker ways. To metastasize, a cancer cell must navigate through tissue, enter the bloodstream, survive immune detection, exit into a new tissue, and start growing. This requires extraordinary coordination, evading obstacles, following molecular trails, and altering behavior at each stage. Cancer, in many ways, is a misguided intelligence, a brilliance without conscience, hijacking the language of health for destructive ends. Let's now turn to the collective intelligence of cells. In tissues, cells communicate not just in pairs, but as networks. When one cell detects damage, it often sends messages that ripple outward, like a warning across a neighborhood. In the skin, a burn triggers calcium waves that spread across nearby cells, alerting them to the injury. In the heart, pacemaker cells coordinate contractions, ensuring rhythmic beating. In the liver, hepatocytes adjust metabolic output based on the needs of surrounding cells. This is not centralized control. There is no overseer. The system organizes itself. Biologists call this emergent behavior, complex outcomes arising from simple local rules. It's seen in flocks of birds, schools of fish, and in tissues made of living cells. The most extraordinary example may be the brain. Though made of neurons, each only capable of basic tasks, the brain exhibits thought, emotion, memory, and creativity. None of this exists in a single neuron, only in the collective behavior of billions of them. This is cellular intelligence at its highest expression. You, your identity, your dreams, your awareness are built from it. And yet, even outside the brain, we see glimpses of this principle. In a wound that closes, in a heartbeat that speeds up during stress, in a fetus forming limbs and lungs. In all of these, cells decide. They adapt. They cooperate. Without a mind, they show something close to wisdom. Let's go even deeper, into a mystery that has fascinated scientists for generations. How do cells know where they are? A cell in your finger behaves very differently from a cell in your liver. But how do they know what tissue they're in and how they should behave? The answer lies in positional information, a biological GPS system. During development, gradients of signaling molecules called morphogens spread through the embryo, like invisible coordinates. Depending on the concentration a cell detects, it knows where it is and what role it must play. Too much of one signal, and the cell becomes part of the spine. Too little, and it becomes part of the skin. This elegant system guides not only the shape of your body, but the very identity of your organs. And even in adulthood, positional memory persists. If you cut your skin, the nearby cells don't just grow back randomly. They regenerate the correct tissue, in the correct structure, in the correct place. Some cells even remember previous injuries. This is called epigenetic memory, a way for cells to record past experiences and adapt more quickly in the future. Think of it as scars beneath the surface. Invisible, but deeply instructive. Let's now enter one of the most mysterious aspects of cellular intelligence: timekeeping. Cells live by rhythms. Some of these are driven by external forces, like the circadian rhythm, which aligns with the cycle of day and night. But even in complete darkness, cells maintain an internal clock. Genes are turned on and off in cycles. Hormones are released in patterns. Energy production follows a rhythm. This is not just background noise. It's essential. Disruptions in cellular timekeeping have been linked to cancer, obesity, mood disorders, and even accelerated aging. Every morning when sunlight hits your eyes, it resets your master clock. That signal then travels, indirectly, to cells throughout your body. Liver cells begin to prepare for digestion. Fat cells adjust their metabolism. Brain cells shift into wakefulness. One flash of light sets off a wave of invisible messages, synchronizing your cellular world with the world outside. But some cells have internal clocks of their own. Even isolated from the brain, they keep time, ticking on in quiet harmony.
One flash of light sets off a wave of invisible messages, synchronizing your cellular world with the world outside. But some cells have internal clocks of their own. Even isolated from the brain, they keep time, ticking on in quiet harmony. And when those rhythms align, the body thrives. When they fracture, we feel it, as fatigue, as fog, as disease. Let's now dive into one of the most emotionally charged topics in science: cellular consciousness. This is a delicate subject. Most scientists would agree that cells are not conscious in any traditional sense. They do not think or feel or want. But still, their behavior can be startlingly sophisticated. They gather information. They weigh options. They respond to their history. They learn from experience. They influence others. Some researchers argue that what we call intelligence may not require thought, only organization, memory, and adaptability. And in that sense, every cell in your body is intelligent in its own way. Even single-celled organisms, like slime molds, can solve mazes, find efficient paths, and avoid traps. With no brain, no nerves, no awareness, they still show purpose. Could it be that intelligence is not binary, but gradient? Not yes or no, but more or less. Perhaps what we call mind is not built suddenly at the level of the brain, but accumulates, layer by layer, from the smallest acts of cellular decision-making. Maybe consciousness begins as conversation, a whisper between living parts, and grows louder as the chorus expands. We don't know, but it's a question worth sitting with. Let's close this part with one final, stunning truth. You are a mosaic of trillions of cells, each one alive, each one ancient, each one intelligent in its own way. They do not know your name. They do not know what you believe, but they keep you alive every moment of your life. They speak in signals and respond in kind. They remember, adapt, sacrifice, and rebuild. You are not a single being. You are a community, a living network of constant, invisible dialogue. And in that endless conversation, you emerge, not in opposition to your cells, but because of them. Every breath, every heartbeat, every dream, every memory. None of it exists without this cellular intelligence, this quiet, unspoken language of life. What happens when the conversation breaks down? When the elegant whispers of cellular communication fade, distort, or fall into chaos, the consequences can be devastating. Because life, in its deepest sense, is not just a set of functions. It is an orchestra of communication, a constant, balanced dialogue. And when that balance slips, when signals are sent at the wrong time, to the wrong place, or not at all, the result is not just disorder. It is disease. In this part, we'll explore the darker side of cellular messaging. What happens when cells misread each other? When they stop listening? When they lie? We'll look at chronic inflammation, cancer, autoimmune disease, neurological disorders, and even aging, all through the lens of broken communication. Because behind every biological malfunction is a story of misunderstood language. Let's begin with one of the most common and dangerous examples: chronic inflammation. Inflammation is not a bad thing. In fact, it's one of your body's most ancient and vital defenses. When a threat is detected, like an injury or infection, immune cells flood the area. They release chemical messengers called cytokines, which call in reinforcements, increase blood flow, and help repair damage. In short bursts, inflammation heals. But when the signals don't stop, when the immune system keeps talking after the threat is gone, inflammation becomes chronic, silent, low-grade, and persistent. This is not an overreaction. It's a failure to resolve. Cells keep sending the same warning messages, even though there's nothing left to fight. The system becomes stuck, like a fire alarm that never turns off, and the consequences ripple outward. Chronic inflammation plays a role in heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, arthritis, and even depression. It damages tissues, confuses signals, and makes the body turn on itself. The whispers become noise. The harmony becomes static, and health begins to crumble. Let's move to something even more insidious: cancer. At its core, cancer is a communication breakdown. A single cell stops responding to the usual signals. It ignores instructions to stop dividing, refuses to die when damaged, and begins to manipulate its environment. Cancer cells don't just grow uncontrollably. They lie. They release false growth factors to encourage blood vessel formation. They produce suppressive signals to hide from the immune system. They co-opt healthy cells, convincing them to help the tumor grow. In essence, they hijack the cellular language of survival and use it for selfish ends. This is what makes cancer so difficult to treat. It's not just a mass of rogue cells. It's a disrupted network that still speaks the body's native tongue, but for the wrong reasons. Imagine a single violin in an orchestra playing the wrong notes, not out of tune, but deliberately, and then recruiting others to follow. That is cancer, a beautiful system turned against itself. Let's now explore another form of confusion, autoimmune disease. In these conditions, the immune system mistakes the body's own cells as enemies. It attacks the joints in rheumatoid arthritis, the pancreas in type 1 diabetes, the nerves in multiple sclerosis. Why does this happen?
In many cases, the immune system misreads molecular signals. Cells that should be recognized as self appear foreign, either due to genetic changes, infections, or environmental triggers. Sometimes, the original signal is so subtle that we still don't fully understand why it's misinterpreted. But the result is catastrophic. The defenders become attackers. The messengers are mistaken for threats. And the peaceful network of the body turns on itself. It's not aggression. It's miscommunication. And often, the damage continues not because the cells want to destroy, but because they've misunderstood the message. Let's turn to a slower disruption, one that affects all of us: aging. Aging is not just the passage of time. It's the gradual loss of coordination within the cellular symphony. Cells begin to ignore repair signals. Communication becomes sluggish. Misfolded proteins accumulate. Mitochondria, the energy centers of the cell, produce less fuel and more waste. And crucially, some cells enter a strange state called senescence. Senescent cells are alive, but no longer dividing. They remain in the tissue, releasing inflammatory signals and disrupting nearby communication. They don't die, but they don't contribute to renewal either. They are like static on the line, clogging the system, confusing the signals, and contributing to the wear of age. Some scientists now believe that clearing senescent cells might slow or even reverse aspects of aging. In mice, removing these cells extends lifespan and improves function. It's not about turning back time. It's about restoring clarity to the conversation. Now let's examine how broken cellular communication can lead to neurological disorders, like Alzheimer's disease. The brain is built on signaling, not just chemical, but electrical, rhythmic, synchronized. In Alzheimer's, neurons begin to die. Proteins misfold and accumulate into plaques. Synapses, the tiny gaps between neurons, weaken or disappear. The cells that once fired together fall silent. But the tragedy of Alzheimer's isn't just the loss of memory. It's the loss of connection. Neurons that once passed signals like dancers in a perfectly choreographed waltz begin to miss their cues. And eventually, the whole network stumbles. It's not just death. It's disintegration of meaningful dialogue. And in the silence that follows, the mind begins to fade. But here's the hopeful part. We're beginning to understand that even in these dark moments, cells are still trying to communicate, still sending distress signals, still asking for help. And as we decode their language, as we learn to listen more carefully, we may find ways to restore the lost conversations. Let's look now at a more subtle, but equally devastating, breakdown of cellular communication, metabolic disorders. In healthy cells, energy production is a finely tuned dance. Signals from hormones like insulin tell cells when to absorb glucose from the blood, when to store it, and when to burn it for energy. But in conditions like type 2 diabetes, this dialogue becomes garbled. The body still produces insulin, but cells stop listening. This is called insulin resistance, and it's one of the clearest examples of a cellular message falling on deaf ears. The result? Blood sugar remains high, damaging blood vessels, nerves, and organs. The pancreas compensates by producing more insulin, until it too begins to fail. This is not just a sugar problem. It's a communication failure between organs, between the pancreas, muscles, liver, and fat cells. And yet, the body continues trying to adapt. Cells still respond to stress, still send out cytokines, still struggle to maintain balance. But the coordination is off. The rhythm is broken. It's like an orchestra playing out of sync. Each section still making music, but the harmony lost. Now let's dive deeper into one of the most tragic forms of cellular silence: neurodegeneration. In diseases like Parkinson's, Huntington's, and ALS, specific populations of neurons begin to die. The reasons vary: genetic mutations, environmental toxins, protein misfolding, but the outcome is the same. The brain's ability to communicate with itself begins to collapse. What's haunting is that the earliest signs are often not death, but disrupted signaling. In Parkinson's disease, for example, neurons that produce dopamine, a crucial messenger for movement, begin to falter. Their signals become erratic. Muscles stiffen, movement slows, not because the muscles are weak, but because the instructions are unclear. These disorders are not just about damage. They are about loss of clarity in the cellular voice. The neuron still exists, but it has forgotten how to speak. Let's step back now and consider how viruses exploit the language of cells. Viruses, by definition, cannot replicate on their own. They need to hijack a host cell's machinery. And to do this, they must mimic, disguise, or override the cell's communication systems. Some viruses produce proteins that resemble normal messengers. Others block warning signals, preventing the cell from alerting the immune system. Some even suppress apoptosis, the self-destruct sequence that would otherwise stop them. It's a form of molecular impersonation, a dark fluency in the language of life. HIV, for example, targets immune cells and disables their communication networks. Influenza manipulates the host's signaling pathways to create an environment perfect for replication. Even the common cold knows how to suppress certain immune responses, buying itself time to spread. This is biological warfare, not of weapons, but of language. And it shows us just how powerful and dangerous cellular messaging can be when twisted. Let's now talk about genetic mutations and how a single change in a message can lead to catastrophic outcomes. DNA is the blueprint for every message a cell can send or receive. And sometimes, even a single mutation, one swapped letter in the genetic code, can change everything. In cystic fibrosis, a mutation in a gene for a chloride channel disrupts how cells manage salt and water. The result? Thick mucus that clogs the lungs and pancreas. In sickle cell anemia, a single amino acid change causes red blood cells to form a rigid, sickle shape, leading to pain, anemia, and organ damage. These are not just structural failures.
They are communication distortions, changes in how cells talk to each other, respond to the environment, and perform their roles. And while the errors may be small, their ripple effects are enormous, like a typo in a single note that throws off an entire musical movement. But even here, cells adapt. In some people with sickle cell trait, the body compensates with increased production of fetal hemoglobin. In others, the immune system adjusts to chronic inflammation. The language bends, twists, struggles, but it rarely gives up. Let's now look at something deeply modern: environmental toxins and their impact on cellular signaling. Your body was designed to understand natural cues: light, temperature, nutrients, stress. But modern life introduces a new class of signals: disruptive chemicals. Things like bisphenol A, BPA, phthalates, heavy metals, and pesticides can mimic or block hormones, confuse receptor pathways, or alter gene expression. These are not just poisons. They are false messages. A chemical that mimics estrogen can cause cells to behave as if the hormone is present, even when it's not. A heavy metal that blocks calcium channels can paralyze crucial communication in nerves and muscles. Over time, these distortions can lead to developmental issues, hormonal imbalances, reproductive disorders, and cancer. Again, the theme returns. When the message is wrong, the system suffers. Let's take a moment to reflect. We often think of disease as invasion, as something external entering the body. And in many cases, that's true. But more often than not, illness arises not from invasion, but from misunderstanding, from broken communication, from silence where there should be dialogue, from noise where there should be harmony. Your body's health is not just a matter of strong muscles or clean blood. It is a matter of clarity. When cells speak clearly, when signals are understood and honored, the system thrives. When that speech falters, slowly, subtly, the system begins to unravel. But here's the hopeful truth. Cells are resilient. The body is adaptive. And even when the conversation is broken, the system tries, again and again, to listen, to repair, to reconnect. Even in disease, there is effort. Even in dysfunction, there is purpose. Even in silence, there is still a signal waiting to be heard. Let's now talk about something astonishing: cellular repair. Despite all the errors, all the noise, all the damage, your body doesn't give up. Instead, it activates healing protocols. When DNA is damaged by radiation or toxins, specialized enzymes like DNA polymerases and ligases swoop in to fix the broken strands. These repair mechanisms are not only fast, they're incredibly precise. In fact, many DNA repair systems can recognize a single incorrect base in a string of billions. If the damage is too great, the cell doesn't panic. It makes a difficult choice to self-destruct. This process, known as apoptosis, is a form of graceful exit, a way to protect the larger organism from the risks of malfunction. Apoptosis is not chaos. It's choreography. The cell breaks down its own contents, packages them neatly, and signals immune cells to clean up, with no inflammation, no scarring, no debris left behind. This is how your body maintains peace. By choosing sacrifice over chaos. By prioritizing coherence over survival of the individual. It is, in a way, cellular wisdom. But repair isn't limited to damage. Cells also rebuild connections. In the nervous system, for example, neurons that lose connections sometimes grow them back. Support cells called glia assist in guiding this regrowth. In the liver, entire sections can regenerate after injury. In the skin, wounds close, not just by filling space, but by restoring order. Signals guide these processes. Not orders, but invitations, molecules that say, "Come here. Do this. We need you." It's a form of molecular kindness. Nowhere is this more evident than in the process of tissue regeneration. Some animals can regrow entire limbs, salamanders, for example. In them, cellular communication is so robust that cells near the injury site dedifferentiate, returning to a stem-like state, and then rebuild the missing structures. Humans can't do this to the same extent, but we still regenerate constantly. Your blood, skin, intestines, and immune system are renewed daily. And in rare cases, like liver tissue, even large amounts can grow back. This is not magic. It's coordinated conversation. Let's turn now to something even more inspiring: Medical science is learning how to repair cellular miscommunication. In cancer treatment, immunotherapy is teaching the immune system how to recognize cancer cells again by restoring lost messages. In gene therapy, scientists can rewrite faulty instructions, correcting genetic errors and restoring proper signaling. In neurodegenerative diseases, researchers are exploring ways to enhance synaptic function, not by forcing neurons to work harder, but by improving their ability to talk to each other. And in aging research, therapies are emerging that clear senescent cells, reduce inflammation, and rekindle the cellular symphony that fades over time. In all these efforts, we see a shift in understanding. Healing is not just about fixing parts. It's about restoring conversations. It's about listening to what the cells are trying to say and helping them say it better. Let's close this part and prepare for the final chapter by returning to the quiet center of our idea. What is disease, really? It's not just dysfunction. It's not just damage. It is misunderstanding. And what is healing? It's clarity. It's harmony. It's the moment when a distorted message becomes clear again, when the static fades and the signal comes through. Your body is not a machine. It is not a battlefield. It is a community of voices, ancient and wise, doing their best to understand one another. Sometimes they falter. Sometimes they lose the thread. But they keep trying, day after day, breath after breath, to speak the language of life. And as long as that conversation continues, so do you. Imagine a future where diseases are treated not with force, but with understanding, where the root cause of illness is not silenced, but heard, not destroyed, but corrected. That future is closer than we think. In this final part, we'll step beyond the microscope and into the realm of possibility, exploring how our deepening understanding of cellular language is already transforming medicine, biotechnology, and even how we define life itself. We'll explore revolutionary tools like CRISPR, synthetic biology, nanomedicine, and cellular reprogramming. We'll look at the ethics of editing life's code. We'll discuss how artificial intelligence is helping us decode the most complex conversations happening within us. And finally, we'll return to the awe, to the quiet, intelligent whispers of cells that brought us here. Let's begin with the technology that's rewriting biology, CRISPR. CRISPR is not just a tool, it's a scalpel for language. It allows scientists to edit genes with unprecedented precision. If DNA is the instruction manual of the cell, then CRISPR is the pencil that can erase, rewrite, or correct the words. Originally discovered as a bacterial defense mechanism against viruses, CRISPR uses a kind of molecular homing system to find specific sequences of DNA. Once there, it can snip the strand and allow for repairs or modifications. The implications are enormous. We can now correct genetic mutations that cause deadly diseases, like sickle cell anemia or certain forms of inherited blindness. We can deactivate viral DNA hidden within our genome. We can even insert new genes entirely, giving cells new abilities they never had before. This is not science fiction. It's happening. And yet, it all hinges on language. CRISPR only works if we understand the grammar of the genome, the syntax of how genes interact, express, and silence. And that knowledge is still growing. We're learning not just how to read the genetic code, but how cells interpret it. Because even the right message, spoken at the wrong time, can cause harm. Now, Let's go further to synthetic biology. What if we could design life from scratch? Synthetic biology aims to create entirely new organisms or cellular systems, built from standard biological parts. Imagine programming a microbe to clean up oil spills, or engineering yeast to produce vaccines, or designing a cell that glows in the presence of toxins. These creations don't occur randomly. They're the result of reconstructing cellular language, designing new proteins, receptors, and pathways that let cells perceive and respond to their environment in novel ways. It's like writing poetry in a new dialect of biology. But with power comes responsibility. What happens if synthetic cells escape into the wild? What if engineered viruses are used maliciously? What are the limits and the ethics of creating life? These are questions we must ask as our mastery of the cellular conversation deepens. Let's now zoom into an even smaller scale to the world of nanomedicine. Nanotechnology is giving us tools to communicate directly with cells, molecule by molecule. These are not drugs in the traditional sense. They're messengers. Imagine a nanoparticle designed to enter a cancer cell and deliver a message, self-destruct, or another that repairs damaged mitochondria by restoring their protein balance. Some nanostructures can carry RNA instructions, reprogramming the cell from within. We're not just treating symptoms anymore. We're changing the language of disease. In trials, nanoparticles are being used to cross the blood-brain barrier, a feat once thought nearly impossible, to deliver therapies for Alzheimer's and brain cancer. Others are being tested to whisper calming signals to overactive immune cells in autoimmune disease. The goal is no longer to conquer the cell. It's to converse with it, gently, precisely, respectfully. Now let's turn inward to something astonishing. Cellular reprogramming. Scientists have discovered that even mature, specialized cells, like skin cells, can be reverted into pluripotent stem cells. These are cells capable of becoming almost anything in the body. This process, first demonstrated in 2006, was revolutionary. It means we can now take a cell, erase its identity, and ask it to become something new: a neuron, a heart cell, a liver cell. These induced pluripotent stem cells, or iPSCs, are being used to model diseases in the lab, screen drugs, and even build mini-organs called organoids. But more than that, they represent a truth that cells have always known. Identity is flexible. Signals matter. Change is possible. What we once believed was fixed, a neuron is always a neuron, a skin cell is always a skin cell, has been undone. Because under the right conditions, with the right signals, a cell can be reborn.
Let's shift our attention to a less tangible, but equally powerful frontier: artificial intelligence and its role in decoding cellular communication. AI is already revolutionizing how we study biology. With billions of molecular interactions happening across trillions of cells, the human mind alone cannot track or comprehend these patterns. But algorithms can. AI models can now predict how a protein folds, a feat that baffled scientists for decades. They can model how cells respond to drug combinations, anticipate disease progression from subtle gene expression changes, and even design brand new enzymes that don't exist in nature. In a way, artificial intelligence has become our translator, our universal decoder of the body's dialects. It listens where we can't, It sees patterns where we see chaos. And it helps us whisper back through targeted drugs, modified genes, and even synthetic biology. With tools like AlphaFold, scientists can now understand the structure of virtually any protein based on its genetic sequence, helping us determine not only what a protein is, but what it might be trying to say. In doing so, AI doesn't replace us. It amplifies our ability to listen to life. And now, let's look at perhaps the most mysterious concept of all, cellular intelligence. We often think of intelligence as something confined to the brain, the realm of thought, memory, awareness. But when we look closely at how cells behave, something uncanny emerges. Cells sense. They process. They respond, adapt, learn from their environment. Some even exhibit decision-making behavior, choosing between multiple fates based on context and signal strength. Stem cells, for instance, don't just become something randomly. They weigh environmental cues, chemical gradients, physical contact, and timing, and then choose their path. Neuron, muscle, bone, or something else entirely. White blood cells navigate the bloodstream like sentinels, sniffing out signals of distress, moving toward chemical gradients, coordinating responses. Some single-celled organisms, like slime molds, solve mazes, navigate toward food, and adapt to changing environments, all without a nervous system. What do we call this, if not a form of intelligence? Not conscious thought, but cognition in its most primal form, the ability to receive information, integrate it, and act purposefully. This idea is gaining traction among scientists, that intelligence might not be restricted to neurons, but could exist in any system that can perceive and adapt. Your body, then, is not just a container for your brain. It is an embodied mind, a living network of conversations, choices, and responses. Let's now revisit a profound example of cellular communication, embryonic development. From a single fertilized egg, you became a person. Trillions of cells, organized into tissues, organs, and systems, all arising from one cell that divided, then differentiated, then organized. But this process isn't just mechanical. It's informational. Cells use gradients of signaling molecules, called morphogens, to determine their position. They communicate with their neighbors, asking, "Where are you? What are you becoming? Should I do the same?" It's as if the embryo is self-assembling from within, guided not by a central planner, but by a distributed intelligence, each cell playing its part in a complex, choreographed symphony. And here's what's even more humbling. If you split a developing embryo, it can often reorganize and form two whole organisms. It's not just copying, it's understanding the pattern and adapting. This is not simply biology. It is emergent intelligence, the kind that arises from communication itself. Now, consider healing through this same lens. When you cut your skin, cells rush to the site. They send and receive distress signals. They activate genes for repair, close the wound, rebuild the tissue. Blood vessels grow. Nerves reconnect. No one gives the order. The cells themselves decide what to do. They remember the architecture of the tissue. They negotiate their positions and functions. And they bring the system back to equilibrium. This is what healing looks like. Not command and control, but consensus. 1,000 small decisions, made locally, that result in global harmony. It mirrors how societies evolve, how ecosystems balance, how intelligence emerges. And it teaches us this. Life isn't about dominance. It's about dialogue. Let's return to the heart of our topic, the secret language of cells, and ask one final question. What can we learn from this? The more we study cells, the more we realize that their strength doesn't lie in complexity alone. It lies in communication, in clarity, cooperation, and timing. And if nature speaks in signals, maybe we should listen. Because the body's language is not so different from ours. It values honesty, precision, harmony, adaptation, listening before reacting. These are principles not just of biology, but of wisdom. And perhaps, in learning how our cells speak, we'll learn a little more about how we should speak to each other, how to repair broken messages, how to respond with care, how to listen, even in silence. Because in the end, life isn't just sustained by systems. It's sustained by connection. And beneath the skin, beyond the genes, within the quiet hum of cellular motion, that's where life truly speaks. Let's now reflect on a part of the body often overlooked in the context of communication, the immune system. Many imagine the immune system as a battlefield, warriors defending the castle. But what if we viewed it instead as a diplomatic network? White blood cells are not just soldiers. They are listeners, negotiators, and sometimes mediators of peace. When a virus enters the body, immune cells don't immediately attack. First, they listen. Specialized cells called dendritic cells gather information, molecular signatures of the invader, and carry it to the lymph nodes like messengers bearing scrolls.
There, the message is presented to T cells, who evaluate it like trained analysts. They don't always respond with aggression. They decide, is this a real threat? What type of response is needed? Who should act? Once activated, T cells communicate their decisions through a variety of cytokines, small signaling molecules that direct the behavior of other cells. Some encourage inflammation. Others suppress it. Some call in antibodies. Others shut the system down after the threat is gone. If this conversation is balanced, the result is health. If it's too aggressive, the result is autoimmunity. If it's too weak, infections persist or cancer can grow undetected. Immunology, at its core, is a language of trust and verification. And it reminds us, even our defenses are guided not by rage, but by information. Let's look now at a fascinating experiment, one that shows how cells can remember. In the immune system, memory isn't stored in neurons. It's stored in cells themselves, specifically memory T cells and B cells. When you recover from a viral infection, your immune system doesn't just reset. It remembers the viral fingerprint. If that virus returns months or years later, these memory cells can respond instantly, launching an attack before you even feel symptoms. This is not instinct. This is archiving, a living cellular memory. And it's what makes vaccines possible. What's more, recent studies have shown that even innate immune cells, once thought incapable of memory, may be trained by past exposures. We're learning that memory may be a fundamental property of all cellular systems, a way to recognize patterns and adjust responses in the future. It's another sign of intelligence, not just in neurons, but everywhere. Now let's visit one of the most ancient, most mystical layers of communication, the microbiome. Your body is not just made of human cells. In fact, you are outnumbered. For every human cell in your body, there are roughly as many or more bacteria, viruses, and fungi living in and on you. Most of these reside in your gut, forming what we call the gut microbiome. This is not an infestation. It's a partnership, These microbes digest food you cannot. They produce vitamins, balance inflammation, regulate your mood, and even shape your immune system. How? Through chemical messages. Microbes produce metabolites, small molecules that interact with your cells. They communicate with your gut lining, influence hormone production, and even signal the brain through the gut-brain axis. This means your mood, appetite, and immune response are not just human experiences. They are microbial conversations, and disruptions to this dialogue through antibiotics, poor diet, or stress can lead to disease, allergies, obesity, depression, autoimmune conditions. It's another reminder that we are not alone, even in our own bodies, and that health depends on harmony, not dominance. Let's explore a marvel of unity now: bioelectricity. We often associate electricity with the brain, but every cell uses electrical charges to function, especially in the heart, muscles, and nervous system. But beyond powering function, bioelectricity also guides development and regeneration. Cells use voltage gradients, differences in electrical potential, to determine position, polarity, and structure. In developing embryos, bioelectrical signals help map the body, where the head should go, where the limbs form, how organs shape themselves. In experiments, scientists have manipulated these gradients to regrow limbs in frogs, even coaxing cells into forming eyes in unusual places, all without genes being touched. This suggests that cells are not just listening to chemical messages. They're also listening to electrical patterns. And here's the haunting part. When these patterns are disturbed, cancers can form. When they are restored, healing accelerates. We may be electrical beings more deeply than we thought, not just chemically reactive, but electrically tuned. And bioelectricity, like all other signals, is a language, one we're just beginning to decipher. Let's take a moment now and zoom out. Think of everything you've learned so far in this journey. Cells talk through proteins, sugars, lipids, ions, and even light. They respond to hormones, neurotransmitters, contact, pressure, and electrical fields. They listen to each other, their environment, the microbes within them, and the signals from organs far away. And they don't just respond. They choose. They adapt. They remember. If this is not intelligence, what is? In your body right now, trillions of decisions are being made, quietly, wisely, without your awareness. These decisions are not random. They are based on communication, on meaning.
Let's shift our attention to a less tangible, but equally powerful frontier: artificial intelligence and its role in decoding cellular communication. AI is already revolutionizing how we study biology. With billions of molecular interactions happening across trillions of cells, the human mind alone cannot track or comprehend these patterns. But algorithms can. AI models can now predict how a protein folds, a feat that baffled scientists for decades. They can model how cells respond to drug combinations, anticipate disease progression from subtle gene expression changes, and even design brand new enzymes that don't exist in nature. In a way, artificial intelligence has become our translator, our universal decoder of the body's dialects. It listens where we can't. It sees patterns where we see chaos. And it helps us whisper back through targeted drugs, modified genes, and even synthetic biology. With tools like AlphaFold, Scientists can now understand the structure of virtually any protein based on its genetic sequence, helping us determine not only what a protein is, but what it might be trying to say. In doing so, AI doesn't replace us. It amplifies our ability to listen to life. And now, let's look at perhaps the most mysterious concept of all: cellular intelligence. We often think of intelligence as something confined to the brain, the realm of thought, memory, awareness. But when we look closely at how cells behave, something uncanny emerges. Cells sense. They process. They respond, adapt, learn from their environment. Some even exhibit decision-making behavior, choosing between multiple fates based on context and signal strength. Stem cells, for instance, don't just become something randomly. They weigh environmental cues, chemical gradients, physical contact, and timing, and then choose their path: neuron, muscle, bone, or something else entirely. White blood cells navigate the bloodstream like sentinels, sniffing out signals of distress, moving toward chemical gradients, coordinating responses. Some single-celled organisms, like slime molds, solve mazes, navigate toward food, and adapt to changing environments, all without a nervous system. What do we call this, if not a form of intelligence? Not conscious thought, but cognition in its most primal form, the ability to receive information, integrate it, and act purposefully. This idea is gaining traction among scientists, that intelligence might not be restricted to neurons, but could exist in any system that can perceive and adapt. Your body, then, is not just a container for your brain. It is an embodied mind, a living network of conversations, choices, and responses. Let's now revisit a profound example of cellular communication: embryonic development. From a single fertilized egg, you became a person. Trillions of cells, organized into tissues, organs, and systems, all arising from one cell that divided, then differentiated, then organized. But this process isn't just mechanical. It's informational. Cells use gradients of signaling molecules, called morphogens, to determine their position. They communicate with their neighbors, asking, "Where are you? What are you becoming? Should I do the same?" It's as if the embryo is self-assembling from within, guided not by a central planner, but by a distributed intelligence, each cell playing its part in a complex, choreographed symphony. And here's what's even more humbling. If you split a developing embryo, it can often reorganize and form two whole organisms. It's not just copying, it's understanding the pattern and adapting. This is not simply biology. It is emergent intelligence, the kind that arises from communication itself. Now, consider healing through this same lens. When you cut your skin, cells rush to the site. They send and receive distress signals. They activate genes for repair, close the wound, rebuild the tissue. Blood vessels grow. Nerves reconnect. No one gives the order. The cells themselves decide what to do. They remember the architecture of the tissue. They negotiate their positions and functions. And they bring the system back to equilibrium. This is what healing looks like. Not command and control, but consensus. 1,000 small decisions, made locally, that result in global harmony. It mirrors how societies evolve, how ecosystems balance, how intelligence emerges. And it teaches us this. Life isn't about dominance. It's about dialogue. Let's return to the heart of our topic, the secret language of cells, and ask one final question. What can we learn from this? The more we study cells, the more we realize that their strength doesn't lie in complexity alone. It lies in communication, in clarity, cooperation, and timing. And if nature speaks in signals, maybe we should listen. Because the body's language is not so different from ours. It values honesty, precision, harmony, adaptation, listening before reacting. These are principles not just of biology, but of wisdom. And perhaps, in learning how our cells speak, we'll learn a little more about how we should speak to each other, how to repair broken messages, how to respond with care, how to listen, even in silence. Because in the end, life isn't just sustained by systems. It's sustained by connection. And beneath the skin, beyond the genes, within the quiet hum of cellular motion, that's where life truly speaks. Let's now reflect on a part of the body often overlooked in the context of communication, the immune system. Many imagine the immune system as a battlefield, warriors defending the castle. But what if we viewed it instead as a diplomatic network? White blood cells are not just soldiers. They are listeners, negotiators, and sometimes mediators of peace. When a virus enters the body, immune cells don't immediately attack. First, they listen. Specialized cells called dendritic cells gather information, molecular signatures of the invader, and carry it to the lymph nodes like messengers bearing scrolls.